I think we are in business. So I can see myself, I can see everything now, which is good. There's a little bit of a time delay, but that hopefully shouldn't mess things up too much in the chat. So my name's Nate. I'm the PR manager here in the UK, and I'm also something of a part-time creative. I think everyone likes to create something. In my free time, I am doing a degree in computer games design, and I'm looking to be a 3D artist, especially for today. So what this stream is all about is, firstly, it's just going to be me showcasing some work that we're going to do together, a little bit collaboratively, and we're going to talk about, obviously while we're doing it, some of the cool stuff that ASUS are doing, the products we're using, and how we can help make awesome stuff. Something else we're going to do is recently on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is we launched the hashtag Made with ASUS, which is the same as the title of the stream. What that is anyone that has ASUS products, whether that's a laptop, whether that's a monitor, it could be a motherboard, it could be a GPU, anything that we make, we want you to show us what you've made with it. So whenever you're showing your work to your followers, to your fans, to your friends, tag it with hashtag Made with ASUS, and maybe we'll have a shout out on this live stream. So let's get straight to it. The thing I wanted to create today is, as some of you or all of you may know, is it's ASUS's 30th birthday this year. We've been doing a lot, and we're quite old as tech companies go now. And what do you do with old things? Well, you put them in a museum. And so this is the scene that I intend to create. As you can see, we've got our lovely reference image here. Oh, there we go. I thought it was a really cool museum type piece. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to take out all the fine art and I'm going to throw in some ASUS products, some of the legacy, things we've seen for the rest of the time. So let's make that nice and small again so we can see what's going on. There we go. And I'm going to be using Unreal Engine for the majority of the work, as you can see in front of you here. And I have created, ever so quickly before we got started, because this is probably the least interesting bit of the 3D modeling world, it's something called a blockout or a grey box. What we've got here then is a demo of a playable area. So as you can see, these little platforms here that we're jumping on are going to be the plinths that we're going to have our great ASUS swag on. And these walls here, we might have some motherboards hanging, we might have some graphics cards, you never know. I feel like we're just going to go with the flow and get it done there. So, without further ado, and now seeing what we're going to do, I feel like it's time to jump in and do some actual 3D modeling. So, I use a modeling program called 3ds Max. This is a little bit less colourful than what we are normally looking at, which is Unreal Engine. But it does the job. So, looking at our scene then, let's get a nice close-up on the reference. We'll start with a really simple shape. We'll go for the plinths. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to make this a playable environment. You know, at the end of the day, I think it'd be really cool if we could run around, walk around the ASUS Museum. So we can do some really clever stuff with this in that we can rescale it. We can use it over here. We can use it over here. We can do some really fun stuff with it. So we will get started. Now, it's pretty obvious to see that this is a box. So I'm going to channel my inner Bob Ross and we are going to get started. So something I like to do in all of my sort of game dev art is make sure we've got a decent reference for scale. Because it's all fun and games making what you think is going to be a tiny chess piece and it comes out higher than, you know, taller than the building. So we can jump in and we can drag in, I like to have a reference box, or we can even grab a biped. So we'll make him a nice little boy, stick man. Oh, he's too tall already. And we'll make him 6 feet. Very attractive, great height. And let's just move him out of the way somewhere. Grab him by the pelvis and pull. Oh, come on, dude. And move him out of the way. So this is going to be our plinth. And now we've got a really good reference size for what it's going to be. And we can use our experience as well as our real world knowledge of how big a plinth is. So we want it to be, I reckon, let's call it 110 centimeters high. That way, the exhibit, whatever it's going to be, if we look at it orthographically, it's going to be a nice eye height for us as the viewer and the player. So when we zoom in, you can see there's a little bit of an air gap here at the bottom. And that's probably where it's got wheels maybe. But what we're going to do is we're now going to take this box and edit it. Let's just change these slightly so they're nice and uniform. Oh dear, there you go. Getting the scale wrong already. Christ, doing it again. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to fire them off in the chat, or any feedback, hopefully positive. And we can see what I can do to answer it. Any budding game devs or anyone with some good advice, it's always good to hear, because at the same time, I'm learning. And yeah, you know, I'm no expert at this. I am very much an amateur. So what we're going to do is I want to raise the bottom of this slightly off the floor. So we're going to grab the bottom face. We are going to go into our nice side view, bring it up, back into our main view. And you can see here, these basically just give me a really good way on the side here to just mathematically see what I'm doing. I can see it on the top, from the side. I can also put a variety of different angles in, whether I want to see it from the bottom or the top. And then I've got my perspective view here. And this is really good for just seeing it from the right angles, allowing me to spin around. Hopefully I'm not going to give anyone motion sickness on the stream. So we've raised it off the floor. And the next thing we want to do, turn on our edge faces so we can see what's going on. And a good bit of advice is always to apply a nice neutral material when you're modeling. This means that you can see the shadows, you can see the right areas, and it allows you to spot the relief. It means you can get a good gauge of things. So now we are going to make our first incision. It's almost a bit like surgery. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the bottom a little bit smaller and then pull it out. And that will give us that lip we are after. So I'm using this screen layout for the first time. So we want to find inset. Here we go. And as you can see with the inset, we can make it bigger or smaller. Without trying to insult anyone's intelligence. Oh, Roger, how are you doing? Just spotted you there. So you never know. Like I said, this is what we're trying to encourage people to do. Get involved. Get creating. So yeah, great to see you on the stream. Anyway, as I was saying, so this basically, for those of you that aren't aware, anything you make in a video game is essentially made out of something called polygons or squares. And it depends on how big or small or different shapes and orientations those are. But that's how I make the model. So when we've inset one big square, we've made it slightly smaller, and we've got 4 now, as you can see around the edge. And this is sort of how things continue. So we'll inset that, which means we cut it inwards, and then we will extrude. And you can see there that fires out the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into our nice side-on view, which is great. And we are going to align this with the bottom. Everyone see this black line here? That is what we call 0. And what that means is when you bring it into Unreal Engine, that's going to be where the floor is. So we want to make sure that we align everything with that, because otherwise we end up with things that are either stuck in the floor or things that are hovering. And again, that takes you, me, the player out of it entirely. So let us eyeball this. We could be specific, but we'll see how we go. Ooh. And that looks about right. Now, something we can do is if everyone looks in the tiny bottom right here, hopefully we're streaming in HD so you can read it. The Z-axis, which is the floor, we want to make sure we've got a little tiny bit of deviation here, but if we just tap 0, that pulls it out. Something you can barely see. So here it is as a great starter for 10. Now, if you look here and here, you can see it's maybe a little bit too high right now. Maybe it's a little bit too obvious as the bottom of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, I'm going to hold shift, and we can grab a ring. Entirely, Antoine, entirely. And then we are going to just bring it down slightly. Hopefully this is going to be a little bit less janky than a Bethesda game. But you never know. I mean, they are experts and I'm an amateur, so we shall see how we get on. So we'll just bring that down slightly again. And I think that is good. So as you can see here, all of the exhibits, well, let's make this a little bit bigger, shall we? All of the exhibits are in glass cases. So what we can do now is we can probably create it as a separate object. And this is going to allow us to move them or attach them or detach them. Gives us a little bit more modularity. So what we'll do is we will name this, because everything needs a name. Box 01 is not very descriptive. And if we're going to be giving this to somebody else, when hopefully we start working as a team, they're going to struggle working out what that is. So we will call this plinth underscore base. And this would be good because if we look on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see this is our object view. So this is every object in the scene. And now what I'm going to do to get a really nice cut on it and to keep the size the same is I'm going to copy this by holding shift and dragging all the way up. And then we're going to name this plinth underscore case, because this is going to be our glass case. And so now we've got this, we can get back to modeling it. We want to drop this down slightly. Now, is that looking right? I feel we want to go just a little bit taller. And then we can keep that seam. I like that, because if we look out the wireframe mode, you can see it just gives the model a little bit of extra silhouette, is what we call it. So when you're looking at that, you can see it's just something a little bit more visually interesting. What I might do is grab the entire thing, and now this is the scale tool. Whereas before we had little arrows, which allow us to pull it in different directions. You have the rotation tool, which is like a nice wheel where we can spin things around and stick it at crazy angles. And then we have the scale tool, which allows us to get bigger or smaller. And so we are going to scale things in ever so slightly. Bit much. It's a bit finicky, this one. It's not very precise. It likes to jump about. I feel that works. So we've scaled that down ever so slightly, which is good. And we've got the air gap there. Let's just bring it down even more. And now what we can do with this bit, just to give us a good sense of what materials are, is we can create a slightly see-through material. And when we take it into Unreal Engine, we'll have to do some crazy maths to make it refract and bounce, but hopefully we'll get there a little bit later on once everyone's got a bit more comfortable with how technical things might get. But we'll keep it simple. And we want to essentially give it a slightly glassier color. So let's make it a nice pale blue. Ooh, yeah. And then we just want to adjust the opacity. So we'll drop that on there first, and we'll try 25. And there you go. So now we can see it's a nice facsimile of glass. This just gives us the opportunity to get a good idea and a reference whilst we're making it, picture it in our minds. And I think the last thing we need to focus on before we're going to get into our next bit of gaming terminology is we can see this lip here. And this is quite low fidelity, this reference. And this is obviously why it's always key to have good reference. So I'm just going to quickly tap into Google now and see if we can find a better reference. Museum plinth. And we've got to rely on my terrible spelling. And here we go. So this will be a nice high-res image. We can just drag and drop that in. And you can see here, some of them are quite basic and simple in what they are. But these ones look like they've got a little bit of a bevel on the edge here. So we can jump back into our plinth base. And we are then going to view the ribbon. And we are going to inset this. So we want to grab highlight all these edges here. And we are going to use something called the connect tool. What this basically does is it allows you to do what it says on the tin, connect. That gives you a line there, which we can then bring up. And we want to do the same thing again. Because what I want to do, oh, dearie, dearie me. What I want to do is create a little lip. So we're going to grab this. We're going to grab these. And going back to what we did earlier, we're going to have another extrude. But this time, rather than going outwards, we are going to go inwards. And there we go. And I think that creates a nice silhouette. Now, all 7 of you, I'm sure, will have played video games at some point in your lives. And hopefully some of you have played from a rather retro standpoint. And I think you remember back in the day when everything was blocky, it was sharp, it was edgy. In the sort of the edgelord sense and also in the physical sense of things. And now modern video games, they're much softer. And things in real life have much softer edges. Unless it's a knife or a polished piece of metal or a brick. Usually things have a soft edge. And so the way we do that with games is we do something called high polygon and low polygon modeling. And here's where things will get slightly mathematical, slightly crazy, but we'll try and keep it vaguely simple. This right now is our low polygon model. we can see in the corner we've got 44 polygons. It's a nice small amount because it's basically a couple of squares we've tacked together. But when we play this in game, and I'm just going to jump back over to Unreal Engine to show you what I'm talking about. When we play this in game, you can see these are obviously very hard edges, except for him, he's a very smooth boy. And here's an even better example. You know, this is absolutely rigid. What we want to do is we want to achieve a slightly softer appeal, something that looks a little bit better. And the way we do that is through adding something called a turbo smooth. So let's attach these two together. Now we've modeled them separately. And we do that with the attach tool. Click on that, match material IDs. And now this is one object rather than two. And what we're going to do is to smooth it, so we're trying to smooth the corners, is we're going to add something called a turbo smooth. This sounds much more metal than it is, and it's going to look pretty crazy in a second. What do we think? All good, huh? No. So what a turbo smooth does is it takes an individual square and it cuts it into 4 more squares and then tries to, using the computer's brain, average out where they are. So you can see how that's turned our nice square plinth into a cylinder. But what we want to do is, before we do that, let's just delete this. Call this plinth base underscore low, because it's our low poly. And now we want to copy it and make a plinth base underscore high. This is a high poly. So we're going to hide the low poly so it gets out of the way. Ooh, I've copied that incorrectly. Let's try that again. I want it to be a copy. If we copy it as an instance, it all falls apart. There we go. And now let's chuck a turbo smooth back on there. And you can see the difference between the high poly and the low poly, right? So we will move our low poly over here just to give you some reference of what we're doing. And like I said, the way the high poly works, or the turbo smooth works, is it takes one big face and cuts it into 4. And so we can control how it does that cutting by making smaller faces that it'll cut into 4, and that will tighten things up. That will give us a lot more squares or polygons in certain areas. And so a great example of this is using the connect tool again. So let us grab this, highlight these, and we can grab all of them individually, or we can use a selection called a ring. And that selects all 4 of these edges around here. Now, if we use a connect, rather than a single line, let's go for a double line, and we will push them up. And we're going to check things out in real time here. You'll see what I mean. So if we push this up, you can see how the polygons are stretching. And this is how we control, especially at the bottom here. You can see how it's a nice smooth rounded edge. If we increase how far they go, we get a nice sharpish edge. And it's soft, but not too soft. That makes sense. So let's drop that down there. And we can do the same again if we grab, let's turn the preview off for a second. Grab this, make a ring selection, which goes up and over now. And this will be a much more obvious representation of that. So we'll connect it again, and you can see almost instantly it's made a square. And you can see how we're pulling it in and out. So we'll push that up again to about 98. Accept that. And once more, we will grab a ring and connect again. And this should see that. And so if we turn off the view, and you can see exactly what I mean almost instantly. We just turn off our wireframes here. You can see how suddenly everything just gets a bit more readable, a bit more viewable. You can see from a distance, especially, that little lip is really hard to see without any curvature to it, because the light is either hitting it or it's not. Now we've added the curvature in ever so slightly, it just makes things more softer, it makes things more real. Obviously, we want to make this little indentation here a bit sharper, however. So we'll continue doing what we've been doing with our loops. So we'll turn this off, turn our wireframes back on, and we will grab this ring, and we will connect. And this time you can see, because it's a much smaller area, we want to just bring it back down a little bit. So we pull that in. And once again, a nice little live update. You can see how the corner was super tight, super loose. So we're going to sharpen this up slightly. Oh, try that again. I think we've hit it twice. And let's grab a ring. Let's come out of this so we can see what we're doing. Grab a ring here, and we're done there. And then we can grab this ring, he says, famous last words. There we go. And we are going to connect there, which is good. And then we will jump on the final ring under here. Again, this is where you've got to start flying around the model a little bit more, which we'll bring down ever so slightly, and we're good. So, take a look. That's much better. That is squarer. It looks like two pieces of wood stacked on top of each other, rather than sort of cloth been hung over something, or something a bit more gelatinous on the whole. And now you can see the last sort of really smooth area we've got is just the top here. And so all we need to do is jump back into our editable poly, turn that back on, and one last string. And so we will connect them. And that should be, we'll have a look and see, all done. So there you go. That's looking much better. We've got a much nicer thing here. And obviously we've still got a little bulb on top. At the moment it looks a bit more fantasy, ancient. So we will jump in and do the exact same thing with the top half. Now, obviously we're looking at two different materials. The bottom half here is probably some sort of plywood, which has been painted and polished. See you later, Roger. Which is painted and polished, which is always good. But glass has obviously got much harder edges. So we will go in and we'll do the exact same thing with the control loops, but we'll make them a little bit tighter. And so here we go. So we will grab our edges, grab a ring, and that's great. And we will jump on our connect tool. And you can see again, we've got issues here. So let's just jump that straight up to 99, see how we get on. And we'll put a preview on. And there we go. We can make the turbo smooth a little bit higher in terms of the iterations. This will just add or take away polys essentially. So we can do lots. And I'm going to do one more and hopefully not crash it. But you can see here, this is now 2 million polygons, which isn't good. That'll never run again. So let's turn that back down. Glad our spanky ASUS hardware can handle it. And we'll see how we get on. So I'm doing all of this currently on a GS30. What this is it's a sort of, they call it a gaming station. It allows you to play games and also to do some work like this. So internally, you've got an RTX 2080, which is a super capable graphics card here. Everyone should be well aware of that. And it's got a bevy. It's got a decent amount of RAM, 32 gig of RAM. It's a really nice size case as well, which allows things to keep cool, which is always good. So let's try that again with the connection. Let's bring it down a little bit. Drop that in there. There we go. And now it's looking a bit like a water cooler. But that's not what we're after. So we need to square those edges off. Square out the round. And connect. Well, let's try getting a ring. There we go. Connect there. Grab another ring. And connect here. And here we go. So there you go. Awesome. So this is our high poly and our low poly. And it's not a huge difference that's noticeable, but in the engine, it will make all the difference, I think. And so what we're going to do now is let's just go about sticking a plaque on the front of our low poly. So we can hide the high poly. Bring our low poly back to the center of the scene. And once we put the plaque on, we will take these away and we'll put them in a different program. And I'll show you how we bring the two of them together. And then we can pull it into engine. We've got an hour left. Hopefully we can get something in there just to show you the full pipeline, or most of the pipeline at least. Excuse me. So here we go then. Another box is what we need to make our name tag. So we'll jump into the front view so everything's orientated correctly. And we can see here it's maybe half the width. So this is what we will do. We'll jump in, eyeball it, which is always good. And you're going to see me closing it. And I think that is about the right dimensions. You can see here, it puts in the middle of the scene, in the middle of where we are, which isn't good. And this is where we jump out to another view. Pull it forward. Perfect. And we want to have this just below our lip. Let me just turn the lighting a bit up. There you go. So we should have some nice, some pretty low quality shadows there. It takes a bit of time for the lighting to settle in. But this just gives you a bit of a better reference of what we're looking at. So what the first thing we want to do is, let's go inside the model, is this back face here. No one's ever going to see it. If you can't see it in video games, you don't need it, is a good rule of thumb. Because again, it's all about making things efficient and run well. So even if we can just delete one polygon with the delete key, that's a nice easy hotkey, then it's something we should do. And again, this is a nice simple shape. It doesn't need to be anything crazy and complicated because a name plaque is a rectangle. And then what we will do is we will copy it. So we've got two of them. Hide the second one. Grab our low polygon base. Attach this. So now this is a part of our low polygon. And let's just make sure we've got the right material applied to it. Oh, there you go. That's just made everything grey. So let's try that again. Let's highlight this and give its glass back. There we go. And then I'm going to grab the high poly. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to grab one of those. And we are going to attach this to it as well. So you can see I'm doing everything in duplicate. This is always good because if you do something to the low poly, you want to make sure you mirror that on the high poly. Otherwise, when it comes to putting the two together, things don't add up, which is never what we want. And you end up with all sorts of crazy colors and shadows and big time issues. So here we are. We add that, but got the same problem. It's gone from being a rectangle to being round. So we can fix that nice and quickly. Let's just do our first little trick of grabbing this, grabbing that, and popping that on there. Weather is horrendous outside. I don't know where it is with you guys, what it's looking like, but I mean, gone are the days of summer, eh? Cool. Is that off center? That is. That is because our plinth is off center. So let's grab this and this. Grab this first. And let's move this into the center. And then grab this. Move this in center. So what you've got to be careful of. You see, it's always good to keep an eye on things and make sure everything's staying in check. So let's have a little looky-loo. And we are going to, if anyone remembers, hopefully they do, grab a ring, connect it twice, bring it down slightly, do the same on this axis. And we want to make sure, you see how here it's a little rectangle? We want to try and make sure that's a little square there as best we can. That's good enough. And then finally, we don't want to forget this one, otherwise we end up with a weird sort of splat rather than a nice hard board, is we add a ring, a connect, and let's bring this one down big time. Let's keep dragging. There we go. And now, done. So you can see now we've got this. It's got a nice soft edge to it. We've got everything here. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to take our low polygon plinth, which is really pretty boring right now. Agreed? You know, it's grey on a bit of bluish grey. What we're going to do is we are going to texture it. We're going to make it look nice and soft and sort of wooden. We're going to make the glass look like glass, and we're going to put some information on the plaque for people to see. And the way we do this is we have to unwrap it. Let me just grab a little bit of a reference image for you and explain what I'm talking about. So there are, in 3D, something you need to do, an unwrapping, like I said, and that basically allows you to take what is a 3D object, something that's round, it's got shape, it's got dimensions, and essentially flatten it. Because when we texture, we do that in Photoshop or Substance Paint or Substance Designer, or if you're feeling really brave, Microsoft Paint. Wouldn't recommend it though. And what you can see here, let's just move our little referencey boy out of the way, is how that works. So this is a great example here. It's a little bit hard to see. Let's see if I can find a slightly larger example for everyone. Here we go. Perfect. And what you can see here is a great example of it. So we've got our little robot here, a nice little mech, and we've taken all of those squares, all those polygons, and we've flattened them to create a sheet, essentially, that we can draw on. Whether we do that by hand or whether we use tools to sort of make it look like wood or make it look like glass or anything like this. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through that process. We are very fortunate in that it's a nice simple model. There's not much to it. When we get into some of the more complicated stuff, when we're looking at putting a motherboard or when we're looking at putting a laptop in there, or even when, if we grab our reference back, we get started on the lights up here. That's going to mean that unwrapping is a little bit more complicated, but we'll see. Clear the slips. I can make the floor lava. I don't know how practical that would be in the museum. We might get shut down by health and safety, but it is something we can do. Not right now. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do that right now? Let's have a look, shall we, at the content in Unreal Engine. Let's see what we've got. Firstly, starter content. Let's just search lava. No, we haven't got anything for lava. Materials. I can't give you lava. I can give you nice polished walnut or even solid gold, but no lava this time. That looks wet enough and lava enough to me, but we'll come back to that a little bit later on. Let's get back to what we were doing. So, time to unwrap. And the way we do that is we go down to our modifier list, type in unwrap, he says, and he loses it. Let's try it again. Here we go. Unwrap. And now we're going to go through the process of taking our model and flattening it out. And we've got our nice little window here to do it. Good thing I've got a load of real estate. So whilst we're doing this, I can just talk to you about it. So I'm currently doing some work on a PA32. What this is, it's one of our ProArt monitors. It's a really nice piece of kit. Obviously, as it says in the name, it's 32 inches across. So it gives me, sitting a meter away, a lot of screen real estate. At home, I've only got a 24-inch monitor, unfortunately. And doing things like this means that I have to get really close. And luckily, I don't have glasses yet, but it's just a matter of time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our checker pattern. And you can see here, this is what we want our unwrap to have, squares. But you can see they're not squares, they're odd-shaped rectangles. We've got some really stretched out ones here, and these are big and these are small. Ultimately, by the end of this, we want to have all of those to be the same size. And this means that when we put the wood or any texture on it, it'll look the same. Because if we go into here, you can see this texture doesn't look very nice. And that's because I have scaled the plane it's on. And if I had everything in this scene with different levels of detail, different size squares, then you'd very much struggle to get a really nice, good-looking game, which is what we're going for ultimately, a bit of quality. So let's get into it then. And this is a really straightforward process. You grab whatever shape you want to make flat, you hit this button and it flattens it. That was a square, and so it's a square. And we'll just move that out of the way. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated, in that if we grab a rectangle and flatten it, you get a rectangle. Now, there's certain rules and good practice when it comes to unwrapping things. And a basic rule of thumb is wherever you see a 90-degree angle, if there's a hard cut, and this is all 90-degree angles, you make it its own separate shape. What you can do is you can take this one, and this one, for example, and you can attach them together, you see? So we have 3 of these faces are all together. And sometimes you want to do that. On the more complicated things, if there's a curve or anything like that, that's what you want to do. But in this case, we're going to be sticking to some nice hard 90-degree angles, which makes this nice and quick for me. So I will boot through this. While I'm doing that, while we're talking about games, has anyone played anything good recently? I mean, what is everyone doing after the Steam Summer Sale? Is it all indie titles, or have we got anything new on the go? Because I recently downloaded Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, forgot how good a game that was, and now it looks absolutely outstanding. So just a quick one here then, going back to what I was saying, is we're looking to, these don't have a 90-degree angle between them. They're all flat, these little rims. So what we're going to do is we're going to select by angle. This will make our lives a little bit quicker. Click it, and as you can see, that has selected the ring. And then we'll hit flatten, and we get a nice little flat ring. And you can see now the scale doesn't match on any of this. this ring is definitely not bigger than this piece. But we'll cover that off in a minute. We'll get that fixed Ricky tick. We'll just keep rolling through here and see how we get on. So yeah, we'll keep going on this, you know, keep going here, and this is going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to look to do a live stream for a couple of hours every Tuesday from 4 p.m. So if you're looking to bunk off that last hour from work, you can tune into my dulcet tones. If you get the time, you know, tune in, give it a watch. Hopefully you will learn something, find something entertaining. And it's not always going to be game dev. Obviously, we've got a little series going at the moment, and we'll get this started. But in time, we'll look to get on a variety of guests, maybe even some of you guys, depending on the sort of work you showcase. And it could be anything. It could be photo editing. It could be music editing. We could be cutting the next big track. It could be a number of things. And hopefully, in time, we can put it out to the viewers and see what you'd like to see once we have made the game, the ultimate ASUS Museum. So here you can see I'm having a bit of drama. I tapped the wrong thing, grabbed it, but quickly fixed. And here we go. So I think I've got, missing one here. You can see a nice stretched area. Let's drop that in there. So this is starting to come together. Right, what haven't we done? Still got this to do. Grab that, bring it over here. I should very much prepare some here's one I did earlier. It's very much a bit of a Blue Peter moment, but there we are, eh? Unwrapping, I think a lot of people in the 3D industry and the sort of the community find it to be a bit tedious. And a lot of you watching this probably don't disagree. But I find it's always great to just, if you're looking, you've had a long day, a hard day, and you want to do some work, but nothing too taxing, bang a bit of music on, just stick your headphones in and jam whilst you unwrap. There's something quite therapeutic. It's almost like doing a puzzle, you know? But we are in luck in that this isn't going to take too much longer to unwrap. So, I mean, anyone that's watching, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. I will do my best to answer, but like I said, I'm not the ultimate authority on a lot of this. Now, we're trying to get in here, and we can't. So we're going to hit Alt-X and make it go semi-transparent. And this just means we can get in where we need to. It's here. There we go. And sometimes you can see you've got to do a bit of acrobatics, but again, screen real estate really helps make that a lot easier. So let's flatten that out. And we're nearly done. We've got one. There you go, see? So we have got another face that's inside the model. So what we can do quickly is we can jump back to where we were. And we can get rid of it, because we don't need that. We've got the base here, and that's it. So let's just jump back into our unwrap. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I didn't delete it. It did not, we're good. Let's drag this out a little bit more. And we've still got a couple of faces. Here we go, we forgot the bottom, which is embarrassing. Never forget that. Grab that. Move that over there, and then we'll just quickly flatten these out, and we can show you the rest of the process. And what I'd like to do by the end of today is hopefully have this with its nice soft edges but its nice low polygon count in the engine. Famous last words. Hopefully the stream doesn't cut out with the storm that's going outside, and then I can drive home in the rain. Right, so we've got that, and that is that everything? Where are we missing? Here we go. So again, forgot what I had. So let's just grab these up. Come on. These ones in here. And you can see sometimes it is a bit finicky, depending on how you build your model. And sometimes this is why it's better to keep things in their individual components. Because it means you don't have to zoom in and squint and do all sorts of crazy camera hacks. And then what I'm going to do is just grab this, and the last one, grab that. Now, if we look at our little square here, this is where the texture is going to be. You can see there's no more green lines in it. And what that basically means is that all of our material, or all of our faces, sorry, are now outside of it. They're good. They're ready to unwrap. But we need to get it into a position where we can get it on one sheet. So what we do, we zoom out, highlight everything, and we rescale it this is going to take care of that sizing issue we had. Done. You can see everything sort of jumps in different size. Now we can do one of two things right here, right now. We can let the computer pack it, which does an okay job, or we can do it ourselves. But for the sake of speed and expedience, I'm going to let the computer do it. You can see here now, we've got everything packed up nice and tight. And if we look at this, everything has got squares that are the same size. Perfect, right? So what we can do now is we're done in our 3D modeling program of choice. It is now time to take it over to a texturing program. So what I will do is, because I didn't have it loaded up, is I will boot this bad boy up. And I'm using a program here called Substance Painter. And this is a program that's been on the scene for a little while now. It's still a relatively new company, and they have gone leaps and bounds into making model texturing a little bit easier. Because back in the day, you had to very much play it by ear. You had to use your flat plane, do it in Photoshop or another painting application. You'd have to sort of eyeball it. You'd have to go backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. What this thing allows you to do is allows you to do it in real time. You can get a full 3D model, spin around and paint it as if you were painting Warhammer or a sculpture or anything like that. So what we need to do is something I forgot to do, is export these two models. So we go into File, Export, Selected, and we will call this one plinth_base_high. Why it doesn't just automatically name it, I don't know, but we are where we are. And there we go, those settings are correct. And then we want to export, let's just collapse this. We want to export this one as well. And again, we'll have to go through the faff of naming it. And we can call this one plinth_base_, there we go, hello. And I beg to differ. That is definitely a valid file name. Right, back to drawing board. Plinth_base_low. God, you can tell it's been a long day. Saray, how you doing? You good, Surya? Hi, good to see you. So here we go. That's good. And let's give this a go. So what are you looking to achieve? Are you a creator, Surya, or are you just here to try and learn something? And let's jump in here, desktop, and I need to find out where this is saved. That's always good. So let's just quickly jump in, export selected, and it is in my documents. Okay, cool. So let's jump in, ASUS documents, 3ds Max, exports, and we want to import the low poly, which is great. Let's make that a nice 2048 resolution, and here we go. So in the scene, we've got our plinth now, which is good, and we want to add the detail to it. So what we want to do is we want to go over to our texture settings. Let's just drag this over here. It just makes it a little bit easier to see. And we want to bake. And so it's called baking. Obviously, it's not like a cake or anything. But what this does is this is how we take all of those nice, soft, smooth corners on the high polygon model, and we get to smash them across onto the low polygon model. And we will put this down here, 2048. And we just want to select our high poly mesh. And this is why we named them something different. Underscore high, underscore low, perfect. And we want to bake by the same mesh name. This just means that the certain things won't clash with each other. And get that there. And then we just got a couple of other settings. This is going to give us, when we go to texture it, some more information. And what we're going to do now is we're going to hit bake. And this should take not very long. It's a very simple model. And we'll see how we go. And hopefully this isn't going to crash. But I have faith in this awesome ASUS software. So we'll just let that do its thing in the meantime. And we'll see how we get on. As you can see, it's just absolutely flying through it, which is always good. Yeah. Oh, there we go. We've got a non-response on Substance Painter. Now, this isn't an issue with the computer. It just sometimes takes a bit of time. Hangs, has to think about what it's doing. Like all of us sometimes. But yeah, once this has done its thing, we can zoom in and I can show you a little bit of something of what we were talking about. Yeah, nice and slow. And you can hear the fans kicking in, which is good. Obviously, this is a very CPU intensive activity because this is taking all of the information, all those polygons, and it's doing some work to make them think. And you can see here now, we've got a little bit of baking errors here. And what that means, you can see we've got these funny shapes. And this is because we've got this shape here, which is essentially clipping through another shape. So what we want to do instead is we're going to do something a little bit differently. And we're basically going to take our plinth base, and we're going to tear it apart. But once we've torn it apart, we're going to put it into Substance Painter in a slightly more put back together fashion. And you can see it's not a big deal. It really isn't. From a distance, you wouldn't notice it. But, you know, let's strive for perfection when we do this. So what we want to do is it's really simple. We want to grab this element here. I want to detach it. Where is detach? I will find it under... Here we go, detach. And we'll call it something like plinth underscore plaque. Oh, there we go, underscore low. Done. And then we'll separate the top again. And we'll have that as plinth underscore case underscore low. And you can see here what we're doing is we're trying to keep a nice naming convention. So everything is whatever it's going to be underscore low. And we'll hide those three. And we'll do the exact same for the high poly. So we'll jump down here, grab this, and we will detach it as plinth underscore plaque underscore high. Donezo. We just have to make sure we put the turbo smooth back on these because we didn't do it with the turbo smooth. So let's have one of them. Turbo smooth. Done. And we'll go back onto our base and we will detach the top. So we have got plinth underscore case underscore high. It has been a long old day. And there we go. And once more, let's just grab the case. Let's turbo smooth it. Turn the iterations up. And what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly what we did last time. We're going to take all three of these. We're going to go to File, Export, Export Selected. And then what we're going to do is we're going to export it as a single object. And what this basically means is that it will register all of those as being different pieces, but it will still import them as a single mesh. And we'll turn the low on, turn the high off, grab these and do the exact same thing. Export, selected, plinth underscore low. Yes. Okay. And so all we need to do now is we just need to restart the scene. So we'll just go to new, grab our remade plinth. Okay, discard the old one. And hopefully you'll see exactly what I mean. Remember those weird little lumps and bumps? Let's see if we can get those fixed. So let's get into a position where we can see them. We had a little funny one under here and some funniness going on up here. And we'll see if we fixed it. And again, it's always a bit of a punt. So let's just get the resolutions all set back up. High and low, great. By the same mesh name. And this is where it's important now. The same mesh name, that basically means that plinth case high and plinth case low will interact, but nothing else will. And the same with the base and the same with the plaque. This is what we want to achieve. And let's try that again. Hopefully we should see now on the model, those smooth edges will pop in and appear. And we will then be good to go, he says. And we'll have to wait and see when the bakes pop up. So we're having a little bit of an issue here. The normal map itself isn't baking correctly. And we can go into our engine. And there's a lot of this. It's a bit of give. It's a bit of take. But you can see here we're not getting a great deal of detail back where we want it. So we've got these. And these are the same name. So let us export these. Let's just double check the settings we've got attached to them. Geometry. We're all good there. Let's give it one more test bake. Let's just see how we get on. So let's delete that. Pull this back in. High, low, and let's give it another try. If this doesn't work, we can just fire it into the engine, and that's something that I can work out in my free time. So it's going surprisingly quickly, which isn't great. But we will see where we get on. And that has not done a good job. So again, I think what we'll do, just for the sake of demonstrating, and so we can all walk away and say we've done something productive with our afternoon, is we will attach these together and we will fix those baking errors another time. So let's attach this and this. And then let's attach... Right, let's just delete the turbo smooths from these, otherwise we end up with turbo smooth, which is never good. And then let's attach the high and the high. Perfect. And so let's try again. Unfortunately, sometimes there is a little bit of give and take, a little bit of improv required, but it all works out in the end. And we have the high case, which has, I've attached the wrong things to the wrong things. What a wally. Right, let's undo all of this. Here we go. Right, so we've got the case low. Let's go to the case high and let's try that again. And let's attach this and this. Now, great. So let's export the two. Get rid of this, get that over here. Perfect. And then let's grab this and no, don't want to publish it. I'm not even sure what that does. And let us export the high poly, which is good. And let's have another try, shall we? So file, new, select, grab this, bring it in, get rid of that. Let's find where we are, perfect. And then let's bake. Get that to a nice high resolution. Grab the high in. Grab the low in. Bit of this, bit of that. And, let's see how this gets on, shall we? It's always a bit of a crapshoot. It looks like it's baking. I can see those little normal errors popping up. There you go. Yep, so we're getting some decent stuff going on. It's happening, finally. And let's see where that gets on. Done. So you can see here, let me just remove the controls, that now we've got a little bit softer edges. It's quite hard to see in this engine here because the lighting's not great. But if we export our textures, and let's drop them somewhere a little bit more practical, let's create a folder on the desktop. And let us call it the ASUS Museum. File names are always good, key to keep things organized. And then we'll just create a new folder called textures. Great, and select this folder. And then we will export, definitely only have one material. Let's see, shall we? And then we'll export those textures. And here we go, export. Then what we'll do is we will jump back into Unreal now. Now we've got everything exported, we've got models exported, we've got the textures exported, we've got everything good to go. We can jump into Unreal and we can start getting things sorted. So I'm just going to put something a little bit more basic on there. Let's go for a floor texture on the floor. Seems practical. And there we go. That is the floor done. And what we're going to do is we're just going to grab some of these plinths and we're going to start putting our own stuff in. So let us create a new folder and we will call this meshes because that's what it is. And we will import our low polygon mesh into the engine. And where are we at? Export plinth base low. Open. And we've got a variety of different things going on here. A lot of them aren't really important for what we're doing. Things like collision. So when we run into it, we stop. We don't smooth through it. That's what we want to see. And so let's import all. Perfect. Ignore that. And now when we drag it into the scene, you can see we've got a nice little plinth. And it's got those sort of default materials that we applied to it before we got here. So there's the front, which is good. And you can see here now, once the light hits it, let's get rid of this. It's a little bit easier to see. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our default texture number 1, and we're going to go into the texture editor. Now I'm hoping, he says, let's open this up here, and let's have this one snapped over here, and this one over here. we should be able to see a difference once we apply the normal map to our model. So let's just zoom in slightly. There we go. And we can see we've got nice hard edges. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to import, let's go back out of the meshes. See, it's always fun trying to manage multiple windows. Let's go back to our content. Let's grab our new folder, call it textures. And then we can import our textures, which are on the desktop in here. Open folder. So I didn't export them to the right place. Let's try that again instead of filling up my hard drive. Right. Desktop. Boom. Textures. Select. Let's try again. Whew. So here we are. It's getting a bit hot under the lights. And finally, let us see. There we go. And so we want our normal maps, because this is what I'm talking about. And now it's time for another lesson. Normal maps then. This one is blank, so it doesn't look like it's baked properly. Not good. Let's have a look at this one. Again, blank normal maps. Not what we want to see. So we will fix this, I think, another time. Let's try that. So yeah, we should be getting some nice smooth edges, but we're not getting smooth edges. So let's just rename this to plinth underscore base high. And because I realise now we got the naming wrong, which isn't good. We're doing so well up to this point. And let us just try once more. One last time before we call it a day, gang. And we'll grab that there. Yes and yes, and yes and yes. And, ooh, give that a go. Collapse that to an editable poly. Sometimes there's a lot of troubleshooting you can do, and I think it just comes with experience, sort of learning what you can and can't get away with. Oh, come on, come on. Underscore base underscore high. Done. And we will see how we get on. Let's try another little bake. So, file new. And yeah, it's a very iterative process. This is why video games, you see, cost an awful lot of money to make when you're hiring hundreds of much more qualified people than me to hopefully do a better job than me. But still, it's never always as simple as just going in, just pulling some points around and making a video game. So, fingers crossed. See how we get on. Bake. Bake. Think? Are we in business? Get a little close up and we'll see, shall we? Ooh. We are still not where we want to be. So let's try one last thing with both of these. Let's just put a nice basic material on it. And put a nice basic material on that one. And we will give it a go. Export. Export selected. Plinth underscore base underscore low. I've got to check my spelling because that's what it will reference. Save. Yes. Okay. And we'll try one last time with this one. File, save. Oh, no, save. We can save in a second. File, export, export selected. Plinth base high, save. Yes. Okay. Great. And we can now, fingers crossed, taste into substance. Start again. Once more from the top. Woo! Plinth base low. Get into a nice visible position. At least you can see things nice and speed up. We can get there. We can get rolling. You can iterate quite quickly. And that's all good. Happy with that. Happy with this. Happy with those. And that. And that. Everyone in the chat, cross your fingers. See how we get on. There we go. So you can see how the edges have been smoothed off now. Oh, undo that. And now if we really wanted to, but I think we should just export it and see how we get on now. Is let's export those textures, find the folder, which is on the desktop. Try again. And we will hop back now into Unreal Engine and maybe see some magic. But as always, a bit of a punt. So let's import our normal map. And there you go. Look, we've got some information on there now. So as you can see, if we look at this, you can see we've got some really weird shapes and some really weird colors. What this basically is that's all that curvature information that's been stored as a texture. And the way it does it is each of the different axes, so up, down, left, right, forwards and backwards, each have a different color. And depending on the angle that that face is at, depends on the color. So it's a pretty interesting if you're into that kind of thing. But we will now see. So the first thing I want to do is I want to re-import my mesh because we've made some changes. So let's find that. Documents, 3ds Max. There's a lot of double clicking through menus. Import this. Yes, all to just replace the settings. And now you can see here it's still very much flat. Pretty boring. And so what we want to do is we want to grab our default texture. Sling it in there. Sling it in there. But now we're going to connect our normal map. So we can grab our normal map. We can put it in the normal map slot. Hit save. And I'm hoping, so the magic happens, we'll see some smoothing. Wish me luck. Boom. And so, should be able to see now those edges looking a little bit softer, he says. Perfect. Right, so let's close that down. Let's see how we're looking in Engine. And so, yeah, you can see in the Engine, just even though it's still a hard shape, you can see here the light and the softness is just falling off around it slightly nicer. Up on the edges from a distance, it's just looking a bit more refined. So if we jump in and play, you see the difference on the edges here. It's all a bit more soft. You've got, not by much, it's still quite a hard shape, but it's not angular. It's not razor sharp there. So I think we're doing all right here. This is our plinth, and what we can do now, we can drag various copies of it throughout the scene. Ooh. And we can keep going with it. So this is obviously, it's grey at the moment, which isn't always what you want to see. But whilst I've got another 5 or 10 minutes, we can just jump in and explore some of the things we could do with Substance Designer. We could make, we've got simple materials, we can drop it in and wait. Apply it to the model. Bam. So here you look, you can see the whole thing's metallic. We've got some of those baking errors there, which is not what we want. We don't want those, but that's something I'm going to fix before next week. Don't you worry. And we could perhaps, if we wanted to, we could even make it nice and wooden. Obviously, we want to adjust some of those features, but you can see very quickly how you can texture something, you can do things like that. So, yeah, I think we've done enough 3D for the day. We've had a good time. We've made some mistakes. We've learned something. And hopefully, we've had a fair bit of entertainment out of it. And as you can see now, we have got in our scene, where it was before, a couple of plinths. We can put a few more here. We can change the dimensions of them. But we're doing well. And now we're going to move on to the final segment. It's just a sort of something what I want to do. And just to sort of show some of the people that have been helping us with hashtag Made with Zeus and helping themselves. So let's just cut back now to a guy we found who tagged us on Twitter. Here we go. So the guy here, Rue, has basically been using his Strix laptop to take some really kick-ass photographs. He's used it for all sorts of different things. You know, like he said there, he's used it for 3D modeling, video editing, and photo editing. And you can see here, he's been to a few bands, taking some pictures. And this is some really awesome stuff. I think it says a great deal about the camera. But you can also see here where he's color corrected, he's post-processed. He's taken full advantage of the gaming power of that Strix laptop to really get the most out of it and capture the mood. Some other really cool stuff we've seen on here is, like I said, it's not just for photography. We've had some 3D art as well. And as you can see here, it's probably a little bit better than mine, but it's the finished project. So here we've got a nice pirate character, which is really cool. A lot of sass, a lot of anger, which is great. And this has been done by a guy called Away in the Mod, as you can see here. So, you know, if you want to see some really cool stuff that he's doing, feel free to flick on there, give him a follow. And finally, we've got our very own Antoine on YouTube. This is Antoine, really great channel to follow. But yeah, he also uses his ASUS monitors to get a really good feel and really nail those colors in the techwear. So yeah, that's just a little highlight of some of the people we've had, you know, making with ASUS. But yeah, it's now down to you guys, out to the floor, to continue to make with ASUS. And we'll talk about it on here. And next week, hopefully, we're going to take on a little bit more, something interesting. Maybe we'll hit those light fixtures, start getting the scene lit up and looking really cool. Probably finish texturing those plinths first. And we'll see how we get on. So until then, thank you all very much for tuning in. And I will talk to you all. Hopefully see you next week. Thank you very much.